Behavior Guidance, Part 3.2. Continuing on with our outline, we have now reviewed what is behavior guidance, why do children misbehave, and now we're continuing with our discussion on how to promote functional behaviors. We need to remember that when we first look at promoting functional behaviors, we have to start with the environment. In our last video, we specifically looked at the physical layout and how we can adjust the physical layout of our environment to promote more functional behaviors. In this video, we're going to touch on the importance of our program schedule and then dive into how we can adjust our curriculum to include things that are going to promote functional behaviors. So how do we promote functional behaviors through our actual program schedule? We need to remember that children are coming to our programs early in the morning if we offer before school programs, and they're coming to us after a full day of school. And sometimes we have children that are coming to us both before and after school. That's a long day for those kiddos. Our schedule needs to make sure to meet the needs of the child depending on the time of day and what they have been doing before coming to our programs and what they will be doing after leaving our programs. To explain this a little bit more, let's look at the examples of snack, bathroom and water breaks, and recess. Early in the mornings, if we have before school programs, often children are coming to our programs not having had breakfast. Many of the parents rely on the breakfast that is being offered by the school. Therefore, we have to keep in mind that they might be a little bit hangry, they might be a little bit less patient. They're also just still waking up from having come to us first thing in the morning. Many of our programs open between 6 and 6:30. It's important to allow our students, especially those who arrive right at the start of our before school programs, to go and eat breakfast as soon as the breakfast window opens up. I have worked at schools where the breakfast window is more than just half an hour, that it can be an entire hour that children are able to go and get breakfast. However, when we have students who are coming to our programs right at the start of our program, 6 or 6:30, they benefit from the opportunity to go and eat as soon as possible as opposed to having just one structured breakfast time. So you need to take that into consideration. Additionally, looking at this on the flip side of after school, there are some days that we might have minimum days and children are coming to us right after having had lunch. They are not going to need snack immediately after that. Alternatively, on a regular full day, they might be ready to eat right within the first 15 minutes of arriving at program. So look at what time they are having lunch during the school day and adjust your schedule accordingly to meet their physiological needs of hunger. We also want to think about what they're doing when they leave our programs. And most children are going to either be offered a snack by their families or be going home to dinner. If they're picked up early, they might be offered a snack themselves before they go to swim class or football or whatever other after-school programs they have in addition to ours. So we want to make sure that we're not offering snack too late either. Bathroom and water is important in that we want to make sure that we have structured and scheduled bathroom and water breaks. Ideally, you don't want it to be a free-for-all where children can go to the restroom whenever they want. This is not going to be promoting functional behaviors because sometimes children will take advantage of the fact that they can get out of academic hour, they can get out of cleaning up, they can get out of participating in a mileage club, having to do a certain number of laps before engaging in free play or recess, because they know they can go to the bathroom at any time. If you have structured and scheduled bathroom breaks, children will know when they have the opportunity to go to the restroom. And when we do this, we need to think again about our overall schedule. When does it make the most sense to allow bathrooms to be open? If possible, you should have, whether it's student safeties monitoring the restrooms or an actual staff member monitoring the restrooms during the check-in procedure of your day, especially for after-school programs. Before school programs should also offer this relatively close to the start of their program because, again, children are coming to us in the mornings just having woken up. Their bodies are still adjusting, waking up, and functioning as well, so they may need to use the restroom. So if we can have a structured and scheduled bathroom water break close to the start of our programs, that is ideal. You also then want to make sure that you provide a bathroom and water break right before you're asking children to go inside for academic hour and to sit down, and to make sure that you also provide, whether that's the same bathroom structured scheduled break or a separate one from before you're going into academic hour. But you want to make sure that you're providing one right before, after snack or after recess, after they have had time to eat, after their body has been able to digest that food a little bit and they might need to use the restroom, or alternatively after they've been running around outside and they need to go drink some water. You also want to think about recess. I know sometimes we don't have the luxury of offering recess immediately before or after snack. Sometimes, depending on the layout of our school, we have to have them a little bit more separated. I have also worked at schools where we decide to do snack first, then go immediately to our academic hour, and have recess be more of something that the children have to earn a certain amount of time. They'll always have at least a 15-minute block of recess, but sometimes they might have 20 minutes. Maybe sometimes they even have 25 minutes because they have finished their academic hour. They were on task, they were focused, and everyone got done with everything they needed to. They checked off all of their boxes. Whereas the opposite can be if they don't and they end up needing to dip into that scheduled recess time. So there is a benefit sometimes for using that recess time to promote functional behaviors of being on task. However, we also need to think about it in the reverse, that if we're not giving children the chance to get their wiggles out first, then our academic hour or enrichment blocks, activity blocks can be very, very stressful because the children just need to get out and run around. I have worked at a school where our 4th and 5th grade students came to us in our after school program immediately from just having finished their PE block. So we did take advantage of this and go immediately into academic hour for these students, knowing that they just had a school day recess through their wheel of having physical education during that time. So we didn't want to immediately have them go to snack and recess again. Instead, we had them do their academic hour. So again, when you're planning your program schedule, if you can give input to whatever schedule is being created, think about what children are doing right before they come to you, and also take into consideration what they will be doing when they leave your programs. If you do this, you can promote more functional behaviors by meeting their physiological needs based on the way you format your day, your program schedule. Moving forward, how can we promote functional behaviors through the curriculum that we offer? I want to take a moment to expand on what we mean by curriculum. I know for me, curriculum was always a scary word in the after-school world. I didn't go to school to become a K through 12 teacher. I went to school to focus more on the whole child, their overall development, and we didn't really use the word curriculum in our programs. So, in working in after school, I wasn't familiar with this word either. What I am familiar with is activities, enrichment. Well, guess what? Those really are the same thing. The idea to simplify it, to explain the difference between curriculum and activities or enrichment, in my personal opinion, is we tend to think of curriculum as being more planned out, more intentional. And I have definitely worked at after school programs that have activity blocks and enrichments that are not intentional. And therefore, you can argue that they aren't really curriculum, but they are still teaching whether or not it was intentional or not. However, in our programs, we do want to be intentional about the activity blocks that we offer, about the enrichments or clubs that we include in our programs. And when we're being intentional, we are offering curriculum. We just tend to use different words. So we're wanting to create a calm and peaceful classroom. And we can go about this, we're promoting these functional, these positive, these respectful, these ideal behaviors through the activities that we offer. But we're also doing it simply through the environment that we're creating. Sometimes as we go about our day, we are so busy thinking about our academic goals for children that we forget about the impact of the social and emotional climate or environment. As children go through their school day and after school or before school programs, they are, however, taking in social information about the environment around them. This is an opportunity for us to tailor our curriculum, our activities, our enrichments, to intentionally focus on social and emotional aspects of development, in addition to our academic goals. These videos are intended for Vista's ACES programs, After School Education and Safety Grant programs, and we have two main requirements of all of our programs per the grant. We need to help with academics, and we need to provide academic enrichment. If we tailor and focus our enrichment towards social and emotional skills, research does show that children will also in turn do better academically. So it is okay for us to have an academic hour where we're providing homework help, where we are providing tutoring, and then to switch gears and not focus so much on academics during our activity blocks and our enrichment blocks. We are still doing academic things. If we're doing art projects, there is still academics in there. When we're doing science experiments, the traditional idea of what we think of as academics is intertwined. But we also can be more intentional about intertwining social and emotional skills in our activity blocks and enrichment offerings. Research shows that if children are not being proactively, intentionally taught social and emotional skills, their tendency to assume what they see as negative increases throughout their elementary school years. What does this mean? If we are not intentional, if we're not providing curriculum that focuses in some way, shape, or form on social and emotional skills to promote functional behaviors, that is truly behavior guidance as opposed to just punishment, then we are perpetuating, we are continuing this cycle of children assuming, well, they did that because they don't like me. The teacher always picks on me because they just think I'm stupid. Or no one thinks I can do anything. We're continuing this cycle of children assuming that everything's negative and that people do things with malintent, that no one could possibly ever do something just to do something nice. Why are you doing that? What are you trying, what's the deal? What's the catch? What do you want from me? That's negative if you're assuming that someone wants something out of any transaction. Sure, there are many transactions, many exchanges where, yeah, a child is trying to earn something or get something. But we can help children to change their thinking so they're not assuming that everything is coming in some form of exchange, or assuming that everyone does something on purpose. They did it on purpose. They tried to hurt me. Accidents do happen. Let's talk this through. Let's be intentional and teach some social emotional skills here. The reason this is important is the last sentence here, that the more that a child sees his or her world as hostile, as negative, the more likely then they are to respond aggressively with dysfunctional behaviors. And that's the opposite of what we are trying to get children to do here. We want them to engage functionally, pro-socially, respectfully, and so on. So we therefore need to be intentional in our teaching of social and emotional skills. When it comes to our curriculum, the enrichment and the activities that we offer, we need to intertwine social and emotional skills into these activities. A quick pause I'm not going to go into it. If you have been taking any of the asset trainings with Audra White, she goes into a lot of detail on different activities that you can do with children that are promoting social and emotional skills. The importance of doing cooperative games over competitive games. If you have not taken advantage of those trainings, I strongly encourage you to do so. Because I know she's offering those, I'm not going to go into more detail here on specific activities that we can do. Instead, I'm going to go over more types of like tips and tricks and little things to keep in the back of your mind on how you can promote pro-social behavior, how you can be intentional in your activities and your enrichment to promote functional, to promote positive behaviors. So first is that you actually need to be intentional. You do need to teach these pro-social skills. So how do you do that? It's easier than you're probably thinking. Read a book. Read a book to the kids about pro-social skills. Find a book that's on sharing. Find a book that's on taking turns. Find a book that's on apologies. Those are pro-social skills. That's going to help the child to see that the world isn't always a negative place. Maybe accidents do happen and they didn't mean to hurt me. Make sure that whatever you're planning, though, is age appropriate. If you plan an activity and you're working with middle schoolers and you're reading them a book on sharing, they're really going to be over that and not into it. A way to make that pro-social, or age appropriate, maybe instead of reading them the book, ask them to write the book. Say, hey, we're going to partner up with this elementary school down the street. We're going to have a field trip. We're going to go down there on a Monday and we're going to read them these stories that we write and we're going to teach them about sharing. We're going to write a book about sharing. You have your writing going on. Have them draw pictures too. And then you're getting them to socially interact and be role models themselves to younger kids by creating this partnership with a nearby elementary school. Make it age appropriate. Have fun with it. An example I have written here is that you can do role playing with puppets and have the kids act it out. And some of you might be rolling your eyes like, yeah, right, my kids aren't going to want to do this. Yeah, they will if you make it fun and interesting. I did this particularly, I did it actually twice. I did it when I worked at a middle school where we had mostly sixth graders. So I do know that 7th and 8th graders would have been providing more pushback. But if I would have acted interested, if I would have talked to them about what we can do to make this more interesting, we could have gotten them to participate in this as well. And I've done this with 4th and 5th graders in particular. Younger kids, you can adjust it accordingly. But what we did with this role playing of puppets was we had the children start by getting in groups that were randomly assigned, and they had to think of a topic, whether it was sharing or listening or taking turns. They decided what topic they wanted, and they thought about their scenario of what was this script going to look like, what was going to happen. They had worksheets to help them think through the storyline. And then they not only had to write their scripts, and each person in their group was going to have a part that they were going to speak in front when they presented this, but they also made their puppets. We had art intertwined there as well. And the kids had a blast with this. They enjoyed and looked forward to the day when they got to work on their puppets and they were going to be working in their groups. And they had a lot of fun when they did get up in front of each other and act out the scripts that they had written. So you can be intentional about teaching pro-social skills and have it be something as simple as reading books that are on sharing or taking turns. Maybe that only takes up 5 to 15 minutes of your day, or you can have it be something more elaborate that goes over a few months and ends in them doing this culminating experience of performing it. Do what you need to do to tailor these to your individual programs. In addition to teaching general pro-social skills, it's important that we take the time to teach compromise. Compromise is a pro-social skill, but we want to touch on it because it's really important that we are teaching kids that things aren't always going to be fair. Yes, we're trying to teach them that the world isn't always a negative place. We're getting them to realize and not assume negativity. But sometimes people do things on purpose, and sometimes we need to learn to take turns. We need to learn to come up with the solution. So we as the adults have to help children think through these things. We have to help them to use their words and to use their words calmly as opposed to cutting each other off as they're speaking, to yelling or just having a certain tone. And then to help them to come up with those ideas of what could we have done differently? What could we do in the future? Alternatives. How can we solve this problem right now as well? In teaching compromise, we need to remember that we are modeling this pro-social behavior. We're going to talk more in the next video about how we ourselves can promote pro-social behavior through our actions, but I do just want to touch on it here in that part of promoting and teaching functional or pro-social behaviors is the fact that we are a model. So we need to make sure to model what we want to see the children doing. If we are not talking to them calmly, how can we expect them to talk to us calmly or to talk to others calmly? Children naturally want to imitate the adults that they have in their lives. They see that we as adults have some type of authority, have some type of power that they lack. And it's not that the children can't have those in appropriate ways, but we need to enable them to also feel competent to have power, which we'll talk about a little bit on the next slide. But we need to take advantage of the fact that children are naturally looking at us because we already have those things and they want to be like us. So if we are not modeling cooperation, empathy, and generosity, then we cannot expect the children to also then engage in those behaviors. We can help children see the effects of their behaviors. And we've talked about this in our first or second video on just generally what is behavior guidance. By engaging in behavior guidance, by guiding behavior as opposed to punishing, we are trying to get children to connect the dots between their actions and the consequences. And not only the consequences on themselves, but potentially the consequences or the effects on others. So simply by engaging in behavior guidance, we are going to be promoting functional over dysfunctional behaviors, more pro-social behaviors. So don't forget the importance of making those connections between their actions and the consequences, even if the consequences are natural consequences, and all you need to simply do is point out what happened. You were running and you fell. Do you think you were going to fall if you were walking? Maybe not, but maybe yeah, maybe you still could have fallen, maybe you could have tripped. But maybe we should try walking next time. Or if you are having to provide a more logical consequence because they still just aren't getting it with a natural consequence. So make sure again that we are helping children to make those connections. We also can assign simple chores. Many programs that I've worked at and that I've seen have classroom jobs. When we have classroom jobs, guess what? You're promoting pro-social behavior, functional behavior, cooperation, individual responsibility, how to take turns, that you don't always get to be line leader because guess what? That's someone's job for the week or for the day. You have children take on age-appropriate responsibilities. You are going to have different jobs in place for first graders compared to fifth graders compared to eighth graders. I know one job, to give an example, is that you can assign older children to be responsible for picking up the devices or rolling a cart to and from a classroom, whereas it's going to be more difficult to have younger children do that simply because of size, because the cart is probably heavy. The devices, if they're getting 10 at a time in a basket, is probably heavy. So you want to make sure that you're assigning things that they are capable of doing that aren't going to frustrate them or aren't going to possibly present safety concerns because it's just too much for them to do given their age and vice versa. When needed, you break those tasks down into smaller steps. You might start with one class job and then realize, ooh, I really need to break that up into 2 class jobs because it was just too much for the one person. That's okay. Adjust as needed. And also avoid nagging. Nagging is about the tone of voice that you're using, about how many times you're reminding a child to do it. And it's okay to remind, but it's about the way that you're reminding. We're going to talk more about this in our next video when we focus on ourselves and how we can promote functional behaviors. We also want to make sure that we're encouraging that individual responsibility of the child by using those developmentally appropriate activities and materials. What do we mean by this? Children can gain a sense of competency, and they should. We should be teaching them that they can as opposed to they can't. I'm going to give an example of art project here. When we're working with younger children and there's a lot of cutting involved, we might decide to do a lot of that cutting ahead of time, or if we have a volunteer come in to do a lot of that cutting ahead of time, because we know it's just going to take a lot longer for the younger kids to do that. And that's fine. Or you can intentionally plan for this project to take longer, knowing that you're going to try and encourage the children to practice their cutting skills and to cut out the parts of the project that need to be cut out themselves. But if you're going to do that, remember to have patience. Remember to model. Remember you're going to repeat yourself. Remember some kids are going to get frustrated and mess up. But say that's okay. Cutting is hard until we get used to it. You're cutting a really thick piece of paper. You have little scissors. Let's go ahead. Here's another paper. Let's try again. And if you don't have the luxury of trying again, then yes, cut those things out ahead of time if you're working with younger students. You also sometimes will have children, to put this in a different perspective, that come up and they say, can you do this for me? I can't do it. And they're doing that simply because they want your attention. But you can flip it and say, here, why don't you show me? I'm going to watch you. I want to watch you do it. And then you see, oh, look, you did do it. You can do it. See, you can do it by yourself. Great job. Because all they really wanted was attention, and they're asking for help simply because they want your attention, not because they can't actually do it. So encourage their sense of competency, their sense of I can, by providing things that are developmentally appropriate, age appropriate activities and materials. So looking at other activities and materials, if we're out on the playground, think about the ball size. You know, they do sell different size basketball, handball, soccer balls based on the age and size, the physical size of the child. Make sure you're providing things that are appropriate. Basketball hoops are a perfect example. Don't do a basketball club unless you have basketball hoops that are going to be the right height for either your younger children or your taller, older children. It's going to be frustrating, and they are going to either feel an overly confident sense of competency, or they're going to really beat up and diminish their sense of feeling that, wow, I can do this. In addition to their actions, we also need to teach children that they can make choices and they can solve problems. A lot of this is going to be us talking them through these processes, and we will talk more about that in our next video on how we ourselves as the adult promote prosocial and functional behaviors. Thank you for watching this video. This was part 3.2, and in our next video we will continue on with ourselves, and then after that we will finally get into the nitty-gritty of actual guidance strategies.